Carlos Mendoza, a name that means nothing to anyone. For 30 years he has been the ghost that haunts the early mornings of Mexico City. Garbage man, a middle-aged man with his shoulders stooped by the weight of 1,000 tons of waste and an even heavier invisibility. His skin is weathered by the sun and soot, his gaze is opaque, lost in the routine of lifting black bags. He is the man everyone sees, but no one ever truly looks at. His path is a monotonous circle of filth and oblivion, an existence spent sweeping up the rot of others, while his own accumulates inside, fermenting in silence. It's 3 in the morning. The garbage truck, a monster of grinding metal, echoes through the silent streets of Polanco. Here, luxury is aseptic, the sidewalks are washed, and the secrets are well kept. Carlos knows these secrets. He touches them every day. The smell of expensive perfume mixed with the sour odor of trash. He sees the hypocrisy in torn designer bags, full of leftovers from parties that cost more than he will earn in a year. It's a brutal contrast to the filthy vecindad tenement he will return to at dawn. It's incredible how stories like mine happen every day and nobody sees. If you're here, it's because maybe you do see. I need them to see. I want to reach 1,000 people who understand. Comment where you're watching this from. Tell me if ghosts like me exist there too. He is taciturn. His co-workers gave up trying to make conversation years ago. Carlos doesn't care. Silence is his companion. But his mind doesn't rest. He analyzes what he collects. The elite's trash is different. It's arrogant trash. Vials of controlled substances, syringes, stained expensive lingerie, financial documents torn in a hurry. He has learned to read people's lives by what they throw away. He isn't just a garbage man. He is the silent confessor of the city's sins, the archaeologist of moral decay. The truck finally dumps its load at the landfill, Carlos's true kingdom. A colossal mountain of debris stretches as far as the eye can see, under a perpetually grey sky. The smell is overwhelming, a mix of decomposition and chemicals. But here, Carlos feels strangely at home. Amidst the chaos and disposal, he's just another piece of the scenery. It is the exact opposite of the luxurious apartments he cleans, but both share the same truth. Everything eventually becomes trash. He returns to his moldy room, the smell of the landfill impregnated in his skin. Invisibility is his greatest torture. He remembers a time years ago when a rich woman dropped her purse. He picked it up. She screamed, not in gratitude, but in fear and revulsion, as if he were a rat. She took the purse with her fingertips and wiped her hand on her clothes. Carlos said nothing. He just nodded and continued sweeping. This is his place in the world. He is not a citizen. He is a tool, an extension of the broom and shovel, something that exists to maintain the illusion of others. Cleanliness. The exception is Elena, an elderly woman who lives in the room next door in the tenement. Her eyes, though clouded by cataracts, are the only ones that register him. "Good morning, Don Carlos," she says, offering him a cup of weak coffee. He accepts with a grunt that almost sounds like "thank you." She is his last thread of humanity. He sometimes catches himself watching her, fearing the day she too will see him as trash, or worse, the day she herself will be discarded by the system just like him. In his room, under the loose bed, there is a shoebox, the museum, as he calls it in his mind. There is nothing of monetary value, just the trophies of his invisibility. An engraved gold lighter he found in a politician's trash, a photo of a child torn in half from the home of a socialite, a single high-heeled shoe stained with wine. He keeps them as proof that they are as dirty as the trash they produce, proof that their rot is real. This morning, however, something is different. A light rain begins to fall, mixing with the sweat and soot on his face. The air is heavy, electric. The truck seems louder, the city more hostile. Carlos feels a strange vibration in his chest, a cold anger that isn't new. but which today seems closer to the surface. He is tired, tired of being the doormat on which the city wipes its feet. Invisibility, which for so long was a passive armor, today begins to look like a weapon he doesn't yet know how to use. It's a Tuesday morning soaked by a cold rain that turns the garbage into a heavy, stinking pulp. The truck stops in Las Lomas, an enclave of wealth where mansions hide behind high walls and security cameras. The work is harder here. The bags are bigger, heavier, full of the carelessness of those who have never had to clean up their own messes. Carlos is on autopilot, his body aching, his mind numbed by the routine. He approaches a pile of black bags in front of a modern design gate. The smell of alcohol and spoiled food is strong, even in the rain. The disaster happens in slow motion. One of the bags, poorly tied and soaked, rips open the moment Carlos lifts it. A cascade of party leftovers, broken champagne bottles, seafood scraps, stained napkins, spills onto the immaculate sidewalk. Part of the filth splashes onto the Italian leather shoes of a man getting out of an armored Mercedes. It is Arturo Valdez, a businessman notorious for his arrogance and power. He looks at his shoes, then at Carlos, and his face contorts into a mask of pure disgust. Arturo doesn't shout. He speaks with an icy calm that cuts deeper than any razor. "Look what you did, you animal." He approaches, the smell of his expensive cologne invading Carlos's fetid space. "You are paid to clean, not to spread your filth. Do you know how much these shoes cost? It's more than your useless life is worth." He takes out his cell phone and in 30 seconds calls the garbage company, demanding the immediate firing of the pig who soiled him. Carlos stands frozen, the trash dripping down his boots, the entire world reducing itself to that hate-twisted face. The humiliation is absolute. Arturo, seeing Carlos's silence, smiles. He shoves his hand into his pocket, pulls out a wad of crumpled bills, and throws them onto the wet ground, onto the shrimp remains. "Here you go, trash, to buy yourself a leash." He gets into his car and disappears. Carlos's supervisor radios the truck and orders him to leave the equipment and go, suspended, but they both know it's a firing. Carlos is left behind, alone on the wealthy street, surrounded by the garbage that now seems a perfect metaphor for his own existence. The rain washes away the tears he refuses to shed. He doesn't take the bus. He walks for hours, crossing the city, his uniform still stained with Arturo's trash. The rain stops, but the storm inside him has only just begun. Upon reaching his room in the tenement, the switch finally flips. The pain, the rage, the humiliation of 30 years crystallize into a single purpose. It was right there, I decided. They weren't going to erase me anymore. If society sees me as a worm, I will act as the plague. I'm tired of being invisible, tired of being stepped on. If they treat me like trash, I will show them what trash can really do. He opens his shoebox. He knows exactly who will be the first to be cleaned. Carlos doesn't wait. The rage is a fuel that burns cold and clear in his mind. He is no longer a broken man. He is an instrument of precision. He spends the next week in a state of feverish vigilance. He is no longer suspended. He is on a mission. He knows Arturo Valdez's routine better than the businessman himself. He knows Arturo jogs in Chapultepec Park every morning at 5:30 before sunrise, a health ritual that contrasts with the rotten garbage he produces. Carlos readies his tools. Not firearms. Too loud, too impersonal. He sharpens a piece of rebar, pulls on his thickest work, gloves, and puts on his dirty uniform. Invisibility, his curse, is now his best armor. The pre-dawn is damp and silent, except for the rhythmic sound of Arturo's expensive sneakers hitting the wet pavement. Carlos waits behind a large trash container, the metallic smell mixing with the dew. He feels no fear, only absolute clarity. Arturo passes by, headphones isolating him from the world, lost in his arrogance. Carlos emerges from the shadows. He doesn't move like a man, but like a piece of the darkness, a phantom of soot. Arturo barely has time to register the figure before the first blow hits him in the back of the knee, rupturing the tendon. The attack is chaotic, visceral. Arturo, the man who commanded boardrooms with a glance, is pathetically fragile. He falls screaming, but Carlos is driven by 30 years of repressed rage. It is not a murder. It is a cleanup. He uses the sharpened rebar not just to silence, but to disfigure, to expose the internal filth he saw in that face. He wants the world to see Arturo exactly as he saw him. Trash. The silence that follows is broken only by Carlos's gasping breath, the hot blood on his hands contrasting with the morning cold. He walks away, blending into the shadows as the city begins to wake. He goes straight to the landfill, his sanctuary. There, among the mountains of debris, he burns the blood-stained uniform. He washes himself at a public tap on the outskirts, the icy water taking the blood, but not the feeling. Staring at himself in the cracked mirror of his mouldy room, he sees a stranger. The opaque gaze is gone. In its place there is an intensity, a feverish glint. He feels no guilt. He feels power. For the first time in his life, Carlos Mendoza is not invisible. He is the man who cleaned up the filth. Detective Mateo Ramirez arrives at the crime scene. He is a cynical, graying man, tired of bureaucracy and the daily horrors of the city. But this is different. The level of violence is personal, almost ritualistic. It wasn't a robbery. Arturo's wallet and expensive watch were untouched. It wasn't a cartel hit. It lacked the theatrical signature. This was pure, concentrated hatred. Ramirez looks at the disfigured body and notices something his colleagues ignore. The killer scattered garbage scraps over the body. "Who would do that?" his rookie partner asks. Ramirez lights a cigarette. Someone who didn't see this man as a person. The garbage company, fearful of any connection to Valdez's murder, quietly reinstates Carlos, placing him on a different route. A fatal mistake. Now, Carlos has renewed access to his menu. He becomes meticulous. He is no longer just a collector. He is a silent judge. He spends his nights in his room, lit by a dim bulb, opening diverted trash bags. He is the detective of moral rot. He finds bank statements from a fraudulent lawyer, proof of pension fund embezzlement. He finds bloody pregnancy tests in the trash of a pro-family politician. The politician is next. Congressman Javier Herrera, a man who preaches about moral values on television while his trash tells a story of depravity and abuse. Carlos uses the service access of the luxury building. He knows the guards' schedules, knows the back-alley trash collection is off-camera. He waits in the dark garage. When Herrera comes down to his armored car, Carlos is already there. This time, it's faster, more precise. The brutality is the same, but now there is a clear signature. The victim's own trash, scattered over the body like a shroud. Mexico City panics. 2 members of the elite murdered in the same brutal fashion. The press, sensing fear and sensationalism, coins a name: El Basurero, the garbage man. It's ironic, but it sticks. Carlos watches the news on an old TV in the vecindad. They show Herrera's face, the luxurious building, and talk about the monster hunting the rich. For the first time, the world is talking about him. They fear him. The invisibility is gone. He feels seen. He feels for the first time alive and powerful. Ramirez is in his office, surrounded by crime scene photos. The smell of stale coffee and cigarette smoke hangs in the air. It's not the cartel, he insists to his captain, who wants to close the case as a gang war. It's social rage. It's ritual. He looks at the map, marking the crime locations. Polanco, Las Lomas. The connection is wealth, but the second connection, the one nobody sees, is the trash. In both scenes, the killer used the victim's garbage as part of the MO. He's not just killing, he's making a statement. Carlos still sees Elena in the tenement courtyard. "You look tired, Don Carlos," she says, her voice frail, but her eyes still kind. He just nods, unable to form a reply. She is the only sound from his old life, the last echo of his humanity. A part of him wants to protect her from this new identity he has assumed, but the dark part, the one now in control, views her with irritation. Her kindness is a weakness he can no longer afford. His humanity is eroding, being replaced by the cold compulsion to clean. The third victim is a socialite, Rebecca Fuentes. Carlos had once heard her over a service intercom call a delivery boy a filthy Indian. Her trash was full of exotic animal furs and receipts for exorbitant beauty treatments. He gets her in her own home. He uses the service entrance. His garbage man uniform is the perfect disguise. Who would stop a garbage man at 4 a.m.? The scene Ramirez finds is the most disturbing. The mirrors in the house are covered with the contents of her trash bags, expensive makeup mixed with food scraps. Public pressure forces the police to create a task force. Ramirez is put in charge, but under intense scrutiny to find a scapegoat. They arrest petty criminals, local dealers. Ramirez knows they are wrong. The killer is smart, patient, and most importantly, invisible. "We're looking for a monster," Ramirez says at a press conference, "but he probably looks just like anyone." Carlos watches this in a bar and smiles slightly. He doesn't look like just anyone. He looks like no one. Power is an addiction, stronger than any drug he found in the elite's trash. The rage that drove him initially has now given way to something different, a sense of divine purpose. He is no longer Carlos Mendoza, the garbage man. He is the cleaner, the exterminating angel of hypocrisy. He starts keeping more significant trophies in his shoebox. A silk tie from Arturo, a signet ring from Herrera. The pleasure is no longer just in the death, but in the selection, the hunt, the judgment. Ramirez is obsessed. He hasn't slept in days. He visits the crime scenes at dawn, trying to see what the killer saw. He finally focuses on what everyone ignores: the service workers, the delivery guys, the security guards, the gardeners, and the garbage men. Who has access to all these houses at odd hours with no questions asked? He mutters to his partner. He requests the lists of all garbage collection companies serving those areas. The list is enormous, but it's a start. The fraudulent lawyer is the fourth. Carlos discovered he was stealing pension funds from common workers. He found the shredded documents and patiently reassembled some. This murder is almost a mistake. The lawyer reacts, fights back, screams. Carlos is forced to be more brutal than planned. In his haste to leave, he leaves a partial footprint from his standard-issue work boot on the expensive carpet. It is the first physical clue he has left behind. The compulsion is making him careless. Carlos returns to the tenement before dawn, the smell of iron mixed with the sour odor of trash clinging to him. Elena is awake, her door ajar. She sees him pass under the dim courtyard light. Her old eyes, though cloudy, notice the dark stain on his sleeve and the intensity in his gait. She says nothing, but for the first time in 20 years, she locks her door as he passes. Carlos's last thread of humanity breaks. He notices her fear. She now sees him as they see him. "It's a standard work boot," the medical examiner tells Ramirez, showing the photo of the print. "Used by construction crews, sanitation, collection." Ramirez focuses. Collection. He cross-references the list of garbage company employees with any recent complaints or firings. Carlos Mendoza's name jumps off the page. Suspended the day before the Valdez murder. Reason for suspension? An altercation with Valdez himself. Ramirez's heart pounds. He has a name. The ghost finally has a face. Carlos feels untouchable. The media calls him the brutal garbage man, and he embraces the title. Brutality is his voice, the only language this city understands. He plans his next move, something bigger. He wants to hit the top of the food chain. He begins studying the trash of the chief of police, a man he knows is deeply corrupt, thanks to the envelopes of money his wife discards by mistake. He wants to show Ramirez that not even the police are safe. Ramirez goes to the vecindad. It is a world apart from the mansions he investigates. He talks to the neighbors. No one knows anything about Carlos. He's quiet, never talks. The perfect portrait of an invisible man. It fits. Ramirez feels he is on the right track. He knocks on Elena's door. She is visibly terrified, but her loyalty, or fear, keeps her from speaking. He's a good man, detective. Just quiet. But her trembling eyes tell Ramirez everything he needs to know. The rage inside Carlos has cooled, giving way to a cold compulsion. He hears Ramirez talking to Elena through the thin wall. He hears her praying after the detective leaves. He remembers Arturo's humiliation. He remembers all the faces that ignored him for 30 years. There is no more morality. There is no more right or wrong. There is only cleaning. There is the filth and the clean, and he is the only one who can decide who is who. Mexico City has changed. The rich no longer go out at night. Sales of security cameras and electric fences skyrocket. Service workers, delivery drivers, chauffeurs, garbage men are viewed with suspicion and fear. Ironically, Carlos, by trying to expose hypocrisy, has only made the elite entrench themselves further in their bubbles of privilege, treating the invisible with even more fear and contempt. The social tension is at its peak, about to explode. Carlos is in his room, looking at the newspaper clippings that label him a monster. They finally gave me a name, he whispers into the darkness. It's hard when you scream for decades and nobody hears you. When you finally find a way to speak, they call you crazy. If you understand this feeling, if you have ever felt silenced by the world, subscribe here. I need to know that I am not alone in this fight, that my voice now, somehow, will be heard by people who understand. Ramirez, frustrated with the bureaucracy that wants a quick arrest, slams his fist on his desk. They don't get it, he yells at his partner. We created this man. The city fed him contempt until he choked on it. He knows arresting Carlos won't solve the problem, but he has to stop the bloodshed. He begins to assemble a trusted team. He won't arrest Carlos in the vecindad. He doesn't want to risk Elena's life. He needs to lure him out. Carlos knows they are coming. He saw the unmarked police car watching the tenement. Ramirez. He needs one last act. A masterpiece. The landfill. His kingdom. He begins to prepare the site, not for an escape but for a final confrontation. He will use the mountains of trash as his fortress, as his stage. He will send Ramirez a message, a personal invitation, drawing him into his territory. The invitation is delivered. Ramirez receives an anonymous box on his desk. Inside, the police chief's trash and a personal item proving Carlos has been in his home. Along with it, an address, the coordinates for the landfill. The challenge has been set. Ramirez gathers his team. He's not going to run, Ramirez says, putting on his bulletproof vest. He wants the confrontation. He wants us to see his throne. Ramirez drives into the night, the rain starting to fall again, toward the heart of the filth, ready to face the monster his city created. The Bordo Poniente landfill is hell on earth, even more so under the torrential rain that turns the garbage into treacherous quicksand. The smell of methane and decomposition is so thick it's almost suffocating. Ramirez and his tactical team advance, the beams of their flashlights cutting through the darkness, reflecting off broken glass and wet plastic. The only sound is the howling wind and the distant rumble of a tractor. This is no place for humans. It is a monument to oblivion. Ramirez feels the weight of the place, a cemetery of excess. He's here, Ramirez mutters into his radio, his voice tense. He's home. The air is electric, as if the very mountains of trash are watching. The intruders. They split up, moving with difficulty over the unstable terrain. The landfill is a labyrinth of debris hills. Carlos, however, moves like a spectre. He knows every tunnel of compacted trash, every blind spot. He watches them from the top of a pile of tires, the king of his filthy empire. One of the tactical officers slips on wet plastic, and before he can get up, Carlos hits him from behind, a quick, silent blow with his rebar. He doesn't kill him, just incapacitates him. It's a warning. Ramirez hears the muffled cry and runs in that direction, realizing too late it was a decoy that separated him from his team. Ramirez finds himself isolated, drawn to a clearing atop the highest mountain of trash. Carlos is there, standing, his filthy garbage man uniform plastered to his body by the rain. He doesn't look like a man, but an incarnation of the filth itself. "You shouldn't have come, detective." Carlos's voice is a harsh gravel. "Here, everyone is equal. Here, your badge is worthless." Ramirez keeps his gun raised but doesn't fire. "It's over, Carlos. Why? Why the brutality?" Carlos laughs, a dry, horrible sound that cuts the wind. "Brutality. I learned it from you. I spent 30 years being treated like trash. I'm just making the collection. I made them see me." "They see a monster," Ramirez shouts, the rain lashing his face. "You didn't clean anything. You just dirtied your hands with the same filth you claim to hate. You became the very thing you despised." The truth of those words hits Carlos, not as redemption, but as absolute fury. The logic of his distorted world collapses. If he is just more trash, then nothing else matters. He lets out a roar that isn't human and charges at Ramirez. It's no longer a hunt, it's an execution. The cleaner mask falls away, revealing only the naked hatred of a man who lost everything, including himself. Carlos knocks Ramirez down. The detective rolls through the mud and trash, losing his gun in the process. Carlos is on top of him, the rebar raised, ready for the final blow. "I am the invisible man," he shouts at the stormy sky, "the man who cleaned up your lies, and now I am going to do the last cleanup. This is my final act, my statement. I forced the world to look at the filth they tried to hide under the rug. And if you, who are watching this, are also tired of being invisible, of having your pain ignored, I ask you to join the others who understand. Your subscription here is proof that my voice, my pain, finally mattered to someone. The moment Carlos brings the rebar down, Ramirez rolls desperately. The steel tip sinks into the mud, inches from his face. The fight becomes primal. Two men caked in mud, punching, kicking, sinking into the filth. There is no technique, only desperation. Ramirez is a trained cop, but Carlos has the strength of 30 years of manual labor and the fury of madness. They roll down the trash heap, glass cutting their skin, the stench of rot filling their mouths. Ramirez manages to grab a piece of twisted metal, using it to block the next rebar strike, the impact vibrating through his bones. The fight takes them to the edge of a leachate pit, a bubbling pool of liquid garbage. Carlos, blinded by rage, tries to push Ramirez in, but the detective, seeing the opening, twists his body and uses Carlos's own momentum against him. Carlos stumbles, his eyes widening in shock, not of fear, but of surprise. He tries to grab onto something, but his hands only find air. He falls backward, plunging into the dark, dense liquid. There is a brief bubbling, and then silence. The king of trash is consumed by his own throne. Ramirez, exhausted, covered in filth, pulls himself from the mud, coughing, as the sirens finally reach the top of the decay hill. Ramirez stands at the edge of the leachate pit, the fetid steam rising as the rain tries, uselessly, to cleanse the area. His team finally reaches him, their flashlights converging on the detective's solitary, mud-covered figure. "It's over," he says, but his voice is dead. Victory tastes bitter, like the bile rising in his throat. There was no justice here, only the inevitable end of a tragedy. Carlos Mendoza, the man the system made invisible, was finally erased, swallowed by the very empire of rot he had claimed. The silence that settles is heavier than the mountains of trash around them, a dirty epitaph for a man who just wanted to be seen. He stands up, the weight of the world on his shoulders. In the following days, Mexico City breathes a sigh of relief. The brutal garbage man is dead. Carlos Mendoza's face, once anonymous, is plastered on the cover of every newspaper. He finally got what he wanted. He stopped being invisible. The irony is cruel. The society that ignored him for 30 years now consumes him as a macabre spectacle. The news programs dissect his miserable life, turning his pain into cheap entertainment. They label him a psychopath, a monster, born from nothing. No one wants to discuss the why. No one wants to admit that, as Ramirez said, they created him. The city prefers to forget, sweeping Carlos's story under the rug, along with the rest of the filth. Ramirez can't celebrate. In his office, he files the El Basurero case. The cardboard box seems as insignificant as Carlos's life. He smokes, looking out the window at the city traffic, the indifferent machine continuing to grind. He caught the killer, but the culprit, inequality, invisibility, arrogance, remains at large. How many other Carlos heirs are out there, silent, collecting their own shoeboxes, waiting for the right trigger? This journey showed me the worst in us. Thank you for listening to me, for giving voice to this story that so many prefer to ignore. If this reflection touched you, subscribe. It's the only way to ensure that these voices, those of the forgotten, continue to be heard. Before closing the case, Ramirez pays one last visit to the vecindad. He finds Elena sitting in the courtyard, her old eyes fixed on nothing. He tells her gently that Carlos won't be coming back. She doesn't cry, nor does she show relief. She just nods, an ancient sadness in her face. "He was a quiet man, detective," she whispers. "I don't think anyone ever asked him his name." In that moment, Ramirez understands the depth of the tragedy. Carlos's death is not the end of the violence. It is just the tip of the iceberg of indifference. The world doesn't mourn the death of Carlos, the man. They celebrate the death of the garbage man, the monster. To Elena, he was just another poor neighbor who disappeared. The final scene. It's 3 in the morning, a month later on the same street in Polanco. A new garbage truck, a new face, a young garbage man, as tired and anonymous as Carlos once was. A luxury car speeds by, almost hitting him and splashing dirty gutter water onto his uniform. The wealthy driver gestures angrily, cursing the garbage man for being in the way. The young worker lowers his head, mutters an apology that no one hears, and continues his work, dragging the black bags. The camera focuses on his face for a moment, his eyes registering the humiliation. And just like Carlos, he remains silent. The city has been cleaned, but the filth remains untouched.